some people think I'm cocky or like confident or whatever. I don't know
Mm.
what to label it. I believe in myself a ton. At the same time, I know that if I think I'm super smart, that's a really dumb perspective for me to be taking and putting my flag in the ground on.
Warning: Damian Andrews' growing revenue and profit, if implemented, will put more money in your pocket. Please use with caution.
Welcome to Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit with international speaker and revenue and growth specialist, Damian Andrews. This is your source for practical, usable, and simple action steps that you can do every day to put more money in your pocket. And now, the host of Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, Damian Andrews.
And the crowd cheers wildly to the trumpeting blasts of elephants sliding through eyes of needles. This is Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, the program that deals with all things that put more cash in your pocket. This is the show that handles your revenue riddles, profit puzzles, operational oddities, and culture conundrums. I am the one, the only Damian Andrews, and on this show today, it is wonderful to have the amazing Gavin Lira. Now, Gavin is the co-founder of the Empathy Firm, a PR firm based on helping clients achieve tangible ROI from their PR and content efforts. He helps his clients gain visibility and authority in the fields by training them how to ace interviews, securing podcasts and media placements for them, and repurposing their content for those placements for social media using the Michelangelo System. And in our pre-show, he was telling me how excited he is about the current evolvement of AI. Welcome, Gavin. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Yo, it's awesome coming on. I really appreciate it, Damien. And yeah, I love the intro. Australians know how to do it right, so I'm glad to be here down under in the podcast studio.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. And that's where the technology is really working for us. I think COVID really, as tragic as COVID was in some ways, it really opened us up to the possibilities that are out there, which I think is what business is about. So let's cut to the chase.
Yeah.
You're like, what, 12 years old by the look of it?
No, I'm 11. I'm 11.
Sorry, I got that wrong. But you've started business. You've got a co-founded a business working in PR. From what I can tell and from my research, you're doing quite well in that business. Tell us about the start of that. I mean, normally I'd say let's jump in the Wayback Machine. There's a Doc Brown invented time machine, but that's well before you were born. So let's let's go back a little bit and talk about, from your perspective, what was the drive? You mentioned the pre-show you actually had your first business when you were 17. What was the driver to do that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it, because as you're aware, many stories can go tons of different directions. But essentially, I was 17 years old. I was procrastinating homework, laying in my bed on my phone at the time on YouTube. And I saw a recommended video that said how to start an online business with $0 down. I had like $300 to my name at the time. Fortunately, I grew up in like an upper middle class family. So like I didn't like need to work to like help them provide. I just had money for my own doings and I was running kind of low and I wasn't working at the time. And I just saw it. I'm like, you know what? This seems like a scam, but I'm bored and it's 8 minutes. And like I've seen these types of videos, but I've never actually clicked on one.
Yeah.
So I decided to watch it. And it was about a business method, which I'm sure you're familiar with, called drop shipping.
Yeah.
And yeah, for anyone that isn't, it's essentially e-commerce, selling stuff online that you get wholesale from a site like AliExpress.
Yeah.
And I watched and I'm like, this actually seems legitimate. Like this seems like this is a way that people can make money. And for me, I was a straight A student in school. So I'm just used to like, okay, here's the rubric. Here's what I do. Boom, get an A, done, whatever. I started this store and followed the quote unquote rubric that all these YouTube videos were telling me on what to do. and I got an F. I had one sale, and it
How
was
did
my
that go?
mother.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, it was $7. This my first store was called Modern Dream Room. It was room decor items for girls ages 16 to like 20, 23 was like the target audience. And yeah, I was like, yo, all these people on YouTube are telling me I'm going to make $10,000 in a week, like doing this so quickly and everything. And it was a real wake up call for me. But that was the first time I got the entrepreneurial bug because I'm like, this is real. I'm like, in school,
It's
it's
the
so
challenge.
like,
You like the challenge by the sounds of it.
oh,
You got
most
a
definitely.
straight A, got an F, and you've gone, oh, I can do this. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's not. Yes, because I saw people that were doing it successfully. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I just refuse to believe that there is something innately like, more special or different about them that would allow them to do it and not me.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to them. That's just me, I think, understanding the truth and reality of whatever you believe actually becomes true.
That's the character you need to run a business too.
Yes, very much so. It's funny because, Henry Ford said it best, whether you believe you can or cannot, you're correct.
Yep.
Um,
I remember the
and
interview. There was one of the founders of. Sorry to interrupt. It will get. But I
no,
remember
you're
on that
good.
with Jeff Bezos. They were talking with one of the early founders, and Jeff Bezos, back in the day before he even had his garage with books in it, said to this investor, "I'm going to turn over $100 billion." And at that time, that money didn't even exist in the world, let alone countries, let alone for a business. And what you're talking about is you had this entrepreneurial spirit. You said, I'm going to do this regardless, if I'm hearing that correctly.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's exactly it. And I love it really stems from a quote that I found out later. I didn't know this quote at the time, but it's one of my favorite quotes now from Gandhi, which goes that your beliefs affect your thoughts affect your words affect your actions form your habits, and your habits form your reality.
Yeah.
So it all starts at a core level within that. To your point, Jeff Bezos believed that, hence he approached it that way and thought big enough to win that big because he's going to be working 80 hours a week. Some restaurant owner is going to be working 80 hours a week. They're both putting in the same effort. It's now what is the opportunity vehicle that they're pursuing.
All right. So your mum's your first customer and only customer of this business. What happens next?
So essentially what I was doing at the time was I was running influencer shout outs to try to drive traffic to this store. So I was paying Instagram pages that had, a pretty large following count to like promote it, whatever. And this is like, I'm paying them like $20, $40. I don't know what I'm doing. I found out later that most of the followers were fake, hence why there was no traffic or nothing that converted. And most of them weren't from countries that I was really trying to target that would be best fits for these products. And I was watching more videos and they were talking about running Facebook and Instagram ads. And I was like, but this like whole thing of like DMing influencers is so much easier because I understand it. And this whole thing about setting up a pixel and having to learn how to like just connect all these things and run the ads seems so daunting and scary. So I kept delaying that, but then I came to the point where I'm like, I'm literally going to run out of money because I had like $300. So I'm like so tactically spending $20 here, whatever, maybe down to like $100 or whatever it is. I'm like, I got to learn Facebook ads. I also got a part-time job as a ref so I could make more money, just refereeing basketball games to fund it. And I went back into it, learning Facebook ads this time, and I got traction. I did not make money. It was not a successful venture, but I like broke even, and I was getting sales online. And I was like, if I had a more unique product or service, I feel like I could actually do this successfully. But because I realized drop shipping, I didn't have an established brand. I was selling the same thing as a whole bunch of other people were selling. It just came down to who could dance the best and market the best. And although that is an important skill to learn in business, what's more important, in my opinion, is the core offer and what you're actually doing. And if you have an established brand, that's a competitive moat as well. So I started talking to local businesses, and one of them agreed to help me. They were a contractor. I undersold the crap out of my services. I charged like $300 a month plus ad spend, which was like, I think I was only running like $10 a day on Facebook. So like $600 a month. Yeah. And it's funny. It actually worked so well. And I think it worked well because this is my hometown and no one else was doing this, but he got booked out for like 6 months because there was a dude, it was just him and his son. They did kitchen and bathroom models plus other handyman work. and they got booked out for like 6 months on projects after working with me for like two months. And then they fired me because they didn't need me. But I was like, but there's proof of concept, you know?
Yeah.
And then I started doing it for other businesses. And then I learned about PR and got into that. And I'm happy to unpack any of that. But that's like the overall gist of that.
I love, there's a couple of key things that you said there. As one was building a moat. You referenced moat, if I heard correctly, because I mean,
Yes, sir.
And anyone that knows business, certainly investing, will know that's one of Warren Buffett's key elements he looks for in a business, is to have a business that has a moat. You're looking for something unique, which that falls into that moat, and you recognize that if it comes down to we've got the same product, it's all about the sparkle that you can put on it, which I'm guessing you've worked out takes a lot of effort as well to put that sparkle there. Building a moat is much less energy intensive exercise.
Yeah, especially because it's one thing if you put sparkle on something and you have repeat customers, because then at least if you're losing money or breaking even on the front end, you can make up for that. It's another thing when you're doing drop shipping and it takes like a month to get the actual thing, and then they get it and it's, you know, it's just not that quality. I didn't really like the business model once I learned more about it. And so I'm like, a competitive moat is not going to be built in this business model, you know, to the point that you're making. Yeah.
So with that now, you've moved into starting the PR firm. You've got out there and you've approached a local business and said, I can help you with your SEO, and it's worked tremendously. They've got booked out to as you said, to the extent they didn't need you anymore. Which is, you know, that's a good thing. It's a testament to that you've done a great job. Because if they're booked out and they don't want to grow that anymore, I have a number of clients like that. They reach a certain level of turnover and they go, we're comfortable here. Not everyone wants to be Jeff Bezos. And that's a good thing that they get to there. What was it like from the perspective of when you now look at that, starting the PR firm? You've had this success that's worked really well. How did you translate that into, you know, the operation that you started by going into speaking to a business saying, hey, I can help you with your SEO, to a legitimate PR firm?
Yeah. It actually all started so before I went to college, which is its own funny story, because I ended up dropping out just to do this full time because it's what I loved and I was learning way more.
Cliche.
That way. I know, right? It's like such a unique story I have. I drop shipped and dropped out of college. What? but pretty much what happened was I started a podcast just like we're doing right now. And for me, my whole thing was I really wasn't profitable for like a year and a half in my agency. And I knew that it was a me problem because I knew that like people that were doing similar things to me were profitable. So that means I had a lack of skills or knowledge or just implementing it correctly, or the time needs to catch up. And I just didn't feel like it was time, because I think that's what a lot of people say to lie to themselves to make it more comfortable. But, you know, you just hear these crazy testimonials and things of how this person scaled their agency from 0 to X in X amount of time. And the reality is most of those people had like a strong background in sales or something. So they come in with established skills or whatever it is. But I just knew, I'm like, this is taking me way too long. Like I'm like making money for myself, but I was staying small. And it really, like, I just knew I needed to learn more. So one of my friends had a podcast and he was interviewing some, you know, large entrepreneurs like Patrick Bet-David and like Brad Lee, like Alex Hormozy, all these guys he was interviewing years ago. And he wasn't my friend at the time when I found this podcast. So what I did was I reached out to him and I led with value. I knew how to grow Instagram accounts at the time. I was just something I learned how to do. And I was like, yo, I can help grow your Instagram or teach you how to do it. I'm really curious on how you're doing this podcast stuff. I'd love to connect. He was like, yeah, I'm down. Like, I'm not even like that interested in growing my Instagram right now, but like happy to connect, whatever. So we ended up connecting. He just showed me how he was getting these big guests on his show and learning from them. And I was like, yo, this is sick. I'm like, I feel like I could learn so much more from this than I could from some formal education. Cause now I'm learning from people that have achieved a similar level of success to what I would like to achieve, at least from my next stepping stone. So that one of the people I interviewed, his name's Jeff Fenster. If you're familiar with Neil Patel, he ran an agency with Neil Patel from 2012 to 2016. And now he runs a franchise called Everbowl, which is an acai bowl franchise in the US. And he taught me about PR. And I learned about that. Another guy named Joe Steiber that I interviewed also, I had a experience with him, actually, like working with him to get PR for myself. And then I saw the effects of it firsthand. Yeah. So that's when I started to learn about PR and how I transitioned into that. Now that journey, once I transitioned into it, it's its own, can of worms with how specifically we operate. And I'm happy to dive into whatever will make the most sense to do so. But that's kind of how we ended up making that shift and then deciding to rebrand and really go all in on the PR firm side of things.
Yeah, so that we'd love to get into that. What I want to step back a little bit as well is what you said there, and I made the note. You said and I'm paraphrasing, but you said words to the effect of that you were the problem. You recognized that you that gap that was missing. And I wonder about that because I often wonder about whether things are hard or easy. And I had that conversation with my son's karate sensei, who's a 7th Dan black belt. And I said, well, hard or easy, in my opinion, is relative to your level of skill. You're a 7th Dan black belt. If I asked you to do a karate grading at a yellow belt level, how hard would it be? He goes, oh, it'd be really easy. And I said, there's my point. From that perspective, you had that awakening, recognizing that you needed to learn new skills. Was that humbling in a way, or was it because you're young and just realized that you didn't know everything? Because sometimes older people can't be taught. Is that...
Yeah. No, it's definitely humbling. I try to not believe that I'm smarter than I am while still knowing I'm capable of whatever I decide I want to do.
Good balance there.
I appreciate it. Yeah. It just is like, some people think I'm cocky or like confident or whatever. I don't know what to label it. I believe in myself a ton. At the same time, I know that if I think I'm super smart, that's a really dumb perspective for me to be taking and putting my flag in the ground on. Like it's good to believe that I'm intelligent. It's bad to believe that I'm smart in the sense of I don't need to look other places for information, or I can't learn things from other people, or I always have the best ideas or whatever. It's like, if I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, why the hell am I in that room? That's a dumb thing to do. I'm clearly not that smart if I'm consistently the quote unquote smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, what was the original question too for that?
Well, that humbling experience of recognizing that you were the problem. So I was just wondering what it was like from your perspective of whether that was a transition shift you had to make, or was it, something because you were young and looking at it from the beginning going, oh, okay, I need to, this is something, I need to learn. There's a lot of smarter people out there. And I just wonder if that was something you just adopted early and continued. Yeah.
So the funny thing is, one of the friends of one of the people I interviewed joined this online coaching program called 7-Figure Agency at the time. It's now called Agency Lab. And, I knew he had good experience with it, and he was on a 7-figure run rate in his business. And I was like, how do I do that? I'm like, what the heck? And I was going so slow, just making like a few $1,000s a month, which, I was fortunate and grateful to be making, but like, I was like, there's just another way, a better way. And this one, actually salesperson at that company was on a call with me because I reached out, I was interested. And he's just laying out the facts with me. And he's like, okay, so you're telling me you want to get to X, you're doing like, what's your plan to actually do that? And I realized in that moment, I'm like, I don't really have a great plan. I'm just kind of hoping this works. And I'm like doing some outreach. I hope we close more clients than we did last week, like whatever. And I didn't have that much money saved up. I really, because the program was $16,000 and I did not have that at the time. They had a payment plan for it. So what I ended up doing is I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all in. So what I did is I dropped out of college. Yeah. I invested in the program and I made a contract with my parents to allow me to live rent free at home because they were super pro college, did not want me to drop out. To live rent free. And it was that I needed to be doing at least $20,000 in my business by that summer. I dropped out a semester. So about, we'll say half a year's time. And if I wasn't hitting that mark, then I would finish all 4 years of college. And I was midway through my sophomore year at the time. And I've been doing this since high school. And I was like making money, but just like it was small. It was lean. It was profitable, but I knew I could be doing more. So I needed to commit all in. So I invested a ton of money into this and put myself in a position where I had to for multiple reasons. One, I needed to pay off this program and be profitable for everything else. And then two, I just was not going to go back to college, which was more of a motivating factor for me. I just didn't like it. I liked the people. I just was sitting in there learning about corporate social responsibility and all these concepts that like hold value, but just aren't really what's going to drive the needle for what I was interested in.
I love that what you did. You cut off, you've made a commitment to say, this is what I'm going to do, which comes back to what we were talking about earlier. And you mentioned that, that you made that. Let's move into the sales side of things. What was that process like for you? Was it, you went out there and, you're a young, good looking guy. You just, did you just walk in suavely and everyone said, here's my money, or how did that work?
It was brutal, man. Yeah, no, it's so in the beginning it was just me doing pretty much everything, right? So I got a few clients because I cold called this one dude who ran an agency in the general area of where I lived. And I knew it was a successful agency, and I was like, hey, I can teach you how to grow your Instagram. Are you interested in this? Selfishly speaking, I'd love to learn more about Facebook ads. Because this was when I was still learning Facebook ads. This was actually my senior year of high school. And he was like, so like taken back. He's like, yo, nobody does that. Like everyone's always like, can I pick your brain, this, that, but you're offering like to help me with this. And that's really cool. So we meet up at a Starbucks. I teach him that. And then he posts on LinkedIn about this experience, and it went like semi-viral. Just, semi meaning like got maybe like 15,000 views or something. But I actually ended up getting 2 clients from that, just from people that like reached out to me and were kind of interested in what I was doing, and I met up with and ended up working with. And just through like LinkedIn automation, I used to run a ton of, and just being scrappy to do whatever makes sense. And I was doing this with my brother, but sales was a real struggle. And that's how I got into PR, was because I was trying to sell these like marketing services. And what I realized is there's so many people running Facebook ads for different companies. And like, I was running them and they work and they're good, but it's saturated. And I felt like I was kind of in a Red Sea, like, oh, we tried this with someone before. Like there was just a lot of people that had bad experiences and like just baggage and price shopping and all these different things. So I did PR for myself, and it helped us close more deals with that. And then I'm like, what if I sold this PR instead? Because like nobody seemed to really be doing it at the time. And we just tried it, and there's a way better product market fit. We booked more calls because the offer was more unique. More people were interested in it, and we ended up closing deals. And we're just like, why am I trying to do this just because everyone on YouTube says to do this one thing? Business is about solving a problem and providing something that has perceived value to people. So I just was like, this does that. So we're going to do this. And then sales became easier. I'm happy to dive into details too on whatever is, going to be valuable to your audience around how we do that now, or what we found to be most effective, or what was effective then, or whatever makes sense. But that's kind of a bit of the process. It was a struggle. But at the end of the day, if you just knock enough doors per se, you're going to get people that, are going to pick up, talk to you. And then a certain percentage of those are going to end up working with you.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, knocking on the doors. But the other part that you mentioned there too, is you said that, you were knocking on the door, selling something that people had had a bad experience with. So you're trying to sell them something that they've already, believe is crap, to put it bluntly, and you're coming in and saying, especially a young kid going, oh, I can do this for you, and they've got a belief system, but then what you recognize that, from what it sounds like, you recognize that was the problem. Now that was their problem. Their problem
Mhm.
was they were having all these bad experiences but you found what you were doing actually solved that problem, if I heard that correctly. And then you started to knock on doors and say, here, this is the problem you're having with this. I can solve that. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so the way of me clarifying that is they had a problem. They've been burnt in the past, kind of like the ex that got cheated on and now you're in a relationship with. So you're responsible not only for normal relationship things, but also what comes along with that, right?
Mm,
So I was trying to overcome three different objections sometimes in the sales. It's okay, do I need this?
yeah.
Do I need it from you? And are you going to do like a job or not like hurt me like this other person hurt me? Right.
Mm,
So it was a lot of that. And at the end of the day, what these people, the problem they're trying to solve, like many business owners, is they want to grow their business and acquire more deals. And when we got
mm,
into PR, we originally were doing a lot of like online press placements, and now we do a lot more in podcast bookings. But we were doing a lot of online press placements, and to us, we're like, hey, this isn't going to drive you top of funnel traffic. Like you're not going to get in like Forbes or something and book a ton of appointments from it. But what
mm,
it's going to do is it's going to allow you to essentially just add credibility to whatever it is you're saying or doing. Because a lot of people that we worked with, they were also in that sea of like I wish more people understood like the unique value that I have and I offer, but I'm struggling to communicate it. It's like, well, that's because you're saying it. How can we get somebody else to say it that is an established, credible figure, which was Forbes or Entrepreneur or whatever publication we were helping them get into. And then they were able to leverage that in their sales process to close more deals and also leverage it to reactivate old conversations, send it to people who like were kind of on the fence and goes to them and be like, hey, did you see this feature? Like kind of reminds me of what we were talking about like a few months ago. Let me know what you think of it, whatever. And yeah, that's kind of like how we started to get into that and then transition to multiple different areas of it.
It's interesting again that and I know I'm coming back to these fundamentals, but it
Yeah.
seems to be, from that perspective, and we can get into the detail, but from that side of things, that it was again coming back to you identified you were trying to do something that everybody else was doing and other people had been burnt with. And I love the analogy of
Yeah.
dating someone that's been burnt. That's hilarious. I think we've all had that
True, man.
experience.
Yeah.
You got to be very,
Yeah.
very cautious. But from that side of things, it sounds like again that you identified and you were listening to the market and creating that relationship. But you talked about credibility, and the part of that, from a sales perspective, and because I've always looked at it from the side of things, that sales is really about building trust that you can do what you say you can do.
Yes.
And it sounded like from that perspective that you went out there, had that experience, you're doing what everyone else is doing, identified there was a problem, and then you worked out, okay, I can sell this problem. How did you establish credibility that you could actually solve that problem that you'd then identified that the customer was having?
Yeah. It was funny because a way that we did it in the beginning of making that transition when we didn't really have case studies or testimonials or reviews or whatever
Mm-hmm.
was simply just being essentially a benefactor of our own service.
Mm,
And because they were like, oh, can you do this? And I would just show them articles that we had been in, and they didn't ask then for, oh, could I see this of a client? Because they just wanted to like, I just messaged them on LinkedIn. They don't even know who I am.
yeah.
To your point, it's building the trust.
Mm,
And a lot of times when we would explain it to them how it helped them on sales calls, they
yeah.
would understand it. Like, yeah, I could see how that would be beneficial. And to your point, it's funny. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize this, but if you had 100% credibility, you would close 100% of deals.
Yeah.
And
I know. I
yeah,
did
so
yesterday to that point. Yesterday, I met with two clients,
Mhm.
or now clients. Never met with them before. We'd had some
Yeah,
discussions, and I walked out with a deal both times.
yeah,
It was just all
yeah,
about credibility. And I talked about a whole bunch of stuff about them. And at the end, I
yeah,
said, "Oh, can we do this deal?" And they went, "That was as simple as that. Can we do this deal?" And they said, "Yep."
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's not the whole back and forth and a game of 20 questions when you have that much credibility. Because when, to your point, it's a lot of that sales process is about building up trust. And how do you do that? You do it through what you've done, but you also do it from what other people say about you, right? Which is publications, which is testimonials, which is, referrals, whatever it is. It all factors into building up trust.
How much of that, I mean, it has become more challenging to get credibility that way? Because I know a long time ago, I was told, if you want to get some credibility, write a book. But everyone writes a book now. Same token, everyone's been in Forbes. I mean, being a little bit facetious there, but you look at it and you look at anybody's website. Oh, we were on the show and we've done that. And anyone that knows me, I've worked in film and television for a while. It's about turnover. You want to get people on there, and if they've got something uniquely they come on and they do the thing, and then the TV show moves on to the next person. So it's kind of like a churn for the TV show. Just because someone was there doesn't mean they had that credibility. Is that changing? Is that becoming more difficult from that perspective and a PR perspective?
That's first off, that's a great question and astute observation, because that's the same trend that we were observing, mainly because of people like me who were solving problems and creating new ones, not intentionally, but indirectly, right? Like seriously, I mean, I've helped.
Everyone wants attention. Sure. We all like attention.
Yeah. It's like, and everyone dreams of being in these big publications too, which is something that is true about that specific service, is people would make the decision to solve a problem, but also out of a place of significance, which is something I realized is that for some people, I was thinking about it very logically of like, here's exactly how I can help with your like closing ratio and this and that, whatever. I realized some people, they didn't really care about that. They just want to be in Forbes because it was a goal of theirs, which was interesting. Which totally makes sense, because how come the way I want to buy is the way everyone wants to buy? It doesn't make sense,
Yeah, it's like having the Super Bowl ad. I know a lot of people chase having that. If they say, if we could get that one Super Bowl ad, it would change our business.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's not.
Yeah.
So how do you show that, again, long-term credibility from that side of things?
So to this question and to your previous point, the trend we were seeing is, all these people, it's almost like this became a new baseline for things of like, oh, you have this, congrats. Now, like you've checked like the boxes for like a baseline of like whatever. And what we've seen, although that stuff is still valuable, and it depends on the market you serve too. That is one thing I will say. If you're working with marketers, they're much more sophisticated to the type of marketing that you use. If you're helping, say, contractors, right, or whatever it is, a lot of this, a lot of people in that space are not getting in Forbes or not getting, you know what I mean? So there's different, market sophistications, and you have to adjust your strategy appropriately based on who you're marketing to and who your target audience is. But for more sophisticated buyers, it's, essentially we were noticing the same thing, which is why we were starting to get people on podcasts and speaking engagements. And what we noticed through this is, if we can get someone on a podcast, we're accomplishing a few things. One, they get on the podcast, which is great. They're talking to an audience. It's long form content. They're building trust with them because it's long form, and they can actually go in depth on things instead of like a 20-second like YouTube short, which is still great, but they serve different purposes. So if we get someone on a podcast, we're helping them from their credibility standpoint of getting on here because they're getting interviewed, which is something that they can help showcase their expertise. But more importantly, they can repurpose that content now and build brand on these platforms. And that to us was like, okay, so many people want to be building brand, but they don't have the time to do so, or they don't necessarily know how. So we're like, we work with people. Essentially, when people ask me what I do, what I typically say is I help people who have expertise and don't have a lot of time build a brand while also driving appointments to their sales team. So it really started to become like, here's getting you on a show where you can talk, showcase your expertise, but then here's how we can repurpose it, help promote the show and yourself in front of an audience, talking about the specific problems that you solve and specific things to your industry.
So, because what you were talking about there, I remember when I first started,
Mhm.
I didn't really think I was in sales that much because I never really thought of myself as sales, but when I
Yeah.
look back at it, I was always pretty successful in dating. So I'm figuring I'm pretty good at sales because I'm not the most
Good
attractive guy on the
correlation.
planet. So, I think I'm cool, but I don't know. I'm not, I know I'm never going to be the front of GQ or anything like that.
Depends how much money you
Although the
have,
top,
man.
I think there was one one issue where it was like the top, the top 10 sexiest guys, 8 of them were bald. So it was like, okay, maybe I got a chance. But
Hey,
from
man.
but from that side of things, when I first started, it was, touch points were, I'm not talking about dating now, was, it
Yeah.
was 5 to 7 times, you had to reach out to a person. Now it's in the high 20s. And is
Yes.
that what you're talking about here? You're taking some content that already exists,
Yeah.
repurposing it to give them more of that touch point again to build that baseline credibility. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. It accomplishes and solves multiple problems. That is one of them in which it solves. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times we teach our clients, hey, you're going on these podcasts. Great. You're introduced to a new audience. Awesome. But also your other forms of marketing, you'll find, and I'm sure you've seen this, but like when you start to build a legitimate like brand with content, all your other marketing starts working better because people do research,
Yeah.
and then they can tell, even if you're not getting tons of views, like, oh, this guy's legit, whatever it is. And when you have a prospect you're talking with and you tell them, hey, let's connect on Instagram, or if someone on your sales team says, hey, let's have you connect with our founder on Instagram too, or Facebook, or whatever it is, LinkedIn, and they follow you, now it's your point of getting those touch points in when they're repurposing that content. Now
Mhm.
you're following them without annoying them at all and staying top of mind, which is more than half the battle, is just staying top of mind. And then you have an actual opportunity now that you have awareness for consideration and then conversion. So yeah, that's most definitely a problem that's solved through it.
Yeah. And because that, what you're talking about there is maximizing your effort. I mean, I deal with that a lot
Yes.
with the corporates that I deal with. I have a program called Max Time, which is time management.
Mm,
Time management's a misnomer because time is a constant and everyone has the same amount.
yeah.
So it's really, how do you manage your effort within that time? And what
Yes.
you're talking about, if I hear you correctly, is that you're taking content that exists, you're repurposing it, so you're
Yeah.
leveraging existing content. Am I understanding that correctly?
Completely. Yeah. And this is where we get fun with AI too, because
Mhm.
we wanted to offer this service for a long time, but we
Mhm.
held back because we couldn't, like, I believe in focus and not
Mhm.
biting off more than you can chew. But
Ah,
now with like AI, so it's become so much simpler. We have a person that can understand what good content looks like, and
yeah.
their output is 6x because of these AI tools.
Yeah.
So it actually became a service that we could offer for people and do at an affordable rate.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, most definitely. We're trying to get the most juice for the squeeze and have the busy founder or executive only spend 3 hours a month on these interviews and have our team do the rest.
Yeah. Focus. I love that word. How important is that? Because now I'm really showing my age here, or age comparison. A friend of mine here in Australia is a very successful businessman. You wouldn't,
Mhm.
or actually, if you search him, you'll find there's some people who've, at rock concerts repurposed his material. He has,
Mm.
his name's Frank Walker, and he has a business called National
Mhm.
Tiles, and he has a very unique ad. And then some DJs actually took that ad and made it into a rock song, or disco song, whatever it's called. Disco. See, I'm sure my
That's
age. It's
iconic.
disco. It's rave, whatever you call it nowadays. You young people, um, you know. But what was interesting in knowing him and talking about him, his entire business was built around radio advertising and only radio
Mm.
advertising. He only ever
Yeah.
did radio advertising. He was unique in that space, and he owned that space.
Yeah.
From that perspective, and when we talked about it, he said he puts all his money into radio advertising. If he had a bigger advertising budget, he'd put that into radio as well. Built a massive
Yeah.
business. He's now retired and his son's taken over. But
Yeah.
that focus side of things, how important it is it when you're dealing with, in the space that you're working on, is it important for them to focus and narrow down and make that one area work, or do you have a more of a scattergun approach in the online space.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. What we say is, well, first off, I think focus in general, it's like the best thing for me that clicked in my brain when I heard it is just like, if you look at your hand, you have 5 fingers clearly, if you're fortunate. And
hopefully, yeah. You might have 6.
yeah.
It could be
God willing.
very unique.
Yeah. If you don't, amazing too. Everyone's different. If each one of these fingers is something that you're focused on, this is how much you're going to be growing in all those different areas each day is your fingers length. Now imagine if you were to stack them all on top of each other in one area. You're making so much more progress so much quicker. And that is the reality because, you know, to your point that you made earlier, it's not how hard you work. It's about how smart you work and what the leverage is on what you're working on. So yeah, for us, what we do is we focus on short form video content for repurposing because that drives so much awareness and is what a lot of these platforms are really pushing. But we have all this other great stuff. So we'll also get people in media because we have a background in, you know, just PR. So we'll get people in online publications from what they said in their interviews. And we'll go create blog posts using like ChatGPT from their own words. So we're not just saying some generic, like, write me a blog about PR or whatever. It's specifically, we'll identify a topic within the interview. Like you might ask me a question of, Gavin, how did you do X? We'll identify that transcript segment, put it into ChatGPT and have it create a blog on how to do X in the words of me because it's my actual advice. So we'll do that from it. Of course, we'll just clip little segments for their YouTube, typically their company's YouTube, because a lot of them don't have personal YouTube channels or don't want one. Sometimes it depends on who we're working with. Yeah. And even just like creating little tweets from that and LinkedIn posts that are text-based. We have our focus, which is short form video, because that's where we believe that 80-20 really lies. But it's also like there's all this other juice that can be squeezed now with AI. And it's like, why not have a presence on these platforms? If you can. And it really doesn't take our team that much extra time to do it because the AI will, we just identify the most unique parts of the podcast that have the most value. And then we use AI to reformat it for these different platforms specifically. And we have a person go through and be like, okay, this is content that could perform well. Or it's like, what is this doing? This beginning is so dumb for a LinkedIn post. Let me change this. You know, we have a person do the finishing touches before we, you know, actually hand it over for approval.
Yeah, it does seem like that when you're using AI, that there is, as much as it's very powerful, it does seem like at times you're dealing with a little infant that, you know, have you read this?
And what we did too, because this is something that I thought was actually really interesting because I love just playing with these different tools. There's a person's content who I like, whose name is Alex Ramosi. And I'm like, he communicates in a very like understandable and direct manner that's really effective for social media. So I put in a whole bunch of his posts on different platforms. So like we have Instagram, you know, LinkedIn, Twitter, and I had ChatGPT analyze each one and tell me what were the commonalities between them. And then I told it to make a prompt for me to create stuff similar to that with data that I give it from a transcript. And it created that prompt. The prompt still needed some adjusting, but then we do it and it sounds way less like cringy or just like, hello, everyone. Like, hi, my LinkedIn followers. You know, it just is, we're like, get straight to the point, make it direct and authoritative and like make the reader ponder after reading it, right? So there's like certain things that we put in there that really actually end up how it shifted and that make it a lot more engaging.
I'm interested with what you just said there about to the point, because you know, when we're talking about the sales process, a lot of, and you know, I was taught this as well. I didn't really adopt it, which I'm glad I didn't. But it seems to be, you know, there's this process of you go through the sales and you've got to establish all this value and you've got this, you know, this pitch that you're going through and working through that. But if you're dealing with anyone that's reasonably sophisticated, they know this is a sales pitch. Just get to the point. You mentioned getting to the point, and I always start mine with, it costs this much and we'll do this for you. Yeah. Rather than the other way around. And people just relax then. Is that when you're getting to the point, have you found that, is that the process that you're talking about? You go, hey, here, this is what we're talking about, rather than trying to get to a story and trying to lead them in, because then we're talking about trust here again. We're coming back to
Yeah.
that trust component. Is that what you build into the SE, the PR material that you work on?
Yeah. So into the PR material is typically around, we ask them the question of, if you could have essentially your target audience, the people that are on calls with you, if you could tell them something, what would you tell them? What would you want to tell them? And how can we get somebody else to tell that for you? Right. So a lot of times we ask them, what objections do you commonly get? Okay, well, what do you say to overcome those objections? What do you wish they realized? Right. And we can get PR around those topics, or just around their main value proposition, depending on what it is. And that's the cool part of podcasts too, is it actually makes it easier for us in the sense of they say exactly what they want to say, and we don't have to worry about, the back and forth of that. One thing too, I will say on something you said, it's really interesting that you bring that up. You're actually the only other person who I've met that has said the thing about saying the price first and then later just everything else later. The other person is my mentor I brought up earlier, Jeff Fenster.
Yeah, he's probably as old as me.
he's a badass entrepreneur as well, and
get to the point,
it works. Yeah. People, because that's one thing too about, and to be honest, a lot of times I don't take any like business development meetings anymore. That's a lot of times with my partner. So in his process, it's kind of whenever it makes sense to bring it up. It's first off like, yo, what's your problem? Like, what's the sitch? What's going on? What are you looking to achieve? And then, but a lot of times I see people, they might ask it early on, how much does this cost? And they give some answer like, oh, well, we need to first identify because our packages are custom or whatever. It's like, just give people a range, because that just, I don't know about you, but for me, when I ask that, I'm like, are you really going to make me sit through like 30 minutes of talking just to see like what the total investment is for different packages that I could use to work with you?
Well, it's like dating. I love your analogy to dating before. If you like the girl, go and ask her, does she want to go out on a date? Make it clear, not do you want to have coffee? We're going to go on a date. Would you like to go on a date? Then it's clear. And if she's not interested, at least you know and you can move on. Otherwise, how many times have you done that? I know I did, like this girl and wouldn't say anything forever and, fluffing around, but she only wants to be a friend. And it's like, well, just ask the question straight up.
Yeah. Well, I think people, they're just so used to like feeling uncomfortable on sales calls. When you can take that discomfort out, it does a few things. One, it's like, you're not afraid of your price point, which a lot of times people can tell that other people are afraid of, like, even just to say the price, they get all nervous and all these other things. You're not afraid, you're leading with that. And now to your point, they're not in the back of their mind thinking, oh shit, how much is this going to cost? Yeah. It's okay. Let me like relax and actually look at and be present with what's being told to me. And if somebody hears the price and they immediately go, oh, I can't do that. Okay, well, probably not a good fit, like, because in reality, how much something costs actually shouldn't matter. It's the value that is returned in proportion for it. If somebody says, oh, I don't have $10,000 to invest in X, it's like, okay, well, if I were selling you a Ferrari that was $300,000 for $10,000 right now, you would find a way to get that 10 grand, because you can go flip it. So it really is all making sure that the value that you're providing is perceived as more than what is being taken. But
that's part of that credibility beforehand, isn't it? You're building that up.
Yes.
Yeah. Through the content that you're putting out.
Yes. Yes. This is something that I wish more people understood. No, it's something that changed my business. Genuinely. It's literally this.
Oh, that super smart. One or two.
Super smart, super handsome, something.
No, working on the
bald adds to the IQ, the sales process does not start when they get on a sales call.
Yeah.
At all. It starts when they are aware of you. And
how do you do that? Tell us about that.
How you get people to be aware of you?
Well, no, I mean, how do you, from that point of view, you're talking about being a PR firm, you're putting some content out there. Bring it. Yeah. I want to link it back to what you talked about being trustworthy.
Yes.
We were talking about that.
Yeah.
How do you establish in the content from the very beginning that you're an authentic person and can do what you say you can do?
Yeah. This is a great question because I think a lot of people overthink the crap out of this. I know I did. Yeah. So it's like if I were to flip that and I were to ask you the question, well, what do you want to know before you work with somebody? Like what's most important to you?
As in, for if I wanted to do that.
Yeah, like let's say if you were hiring a marketing firm or a PR firm, like what would you want to know before you were to like actually go and hire that firm?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. What would I want to know? Well, I want to know whether they can deliver what they say they can deliver, whether they can deliver the what I'm looking for specifically. So whether, I might have an objective where, I'm looking at my sales and going, okay, I think there's a bigger market out there that I'm not tapping into. Can I tap into that market? And are they aware of that market? Are they aware of what I'm attempting to do? Are they going to listen to me as to what I want to do? Listening's a big thing that people don't do. They're the key fundamentals that I would look for.
Yes. So all that, so many of the things you talked about, how it's typically done is people don't even want to get on a call because they have so many like of these unanswered things, and they just assume, because most of the time when they get on a call, they don't move forward with people. That's just kind of the nature of sales. When you're making content, people are answering these questions in their own head before they even hop on a call with you. They say, oh, I have this problem. That's why I watched this YouTube video on how to do X, is because I want to do X. This person gave me, I can tell that this is like a smart way to go about it. It really seems like it would make sense. Because once you're in the space long enough, you can tell if something just seems like gibberish, or if it's like, oh, this actually has legs to stand on. Like this is a good strategy. And then it's like when you have third-party social proof now from, other people liking the video or just seeing how there's a lot of content or whatever, it makes you feel more comfortable. You can go and sell yourself, and it never feels like selling because you're educating yourself. And you're coming from a very authoritative standpoint when you're educating, because we're just conditioned that anyone that we're learning from they just have more credibility, right? Like our teachers, professors, whatever it may be, business mentors. And that's essentially what you become, is you become this weird mentor on this sub niche that you're helping them with without ever talking to them. So now you're scaling one to many through technology. And now when they hop on the call, it's way less about, oh, I need to know how to handle this objection, because you've already handled so many proactively just by building know, like, and trust through your content.
How important is it when you're putting that content out to be true to your brand? Because I look at a lot of things on media out there at the moment, and the ads that are there, and there'll be, most of it, I think, when I look at YouTube, and the ads that are there, I think YouTube's just a hub for scammers, to be honest. That's now what I feel, because majority ads on there are just, the ones that they're even starting to move into the AI bot being in there.
Yeah.
But every now and then I'll see a credible business that I know is an established business come on. I go, oh, okay, that's an established business. But it's not because they were advertising on YouTube. I'm looking at going, well, their brand is established, but I know their brand. How important is it to establish what your brand is and stick to that?
Oh, yeah. So a few things. I think a lot of times when we think of things like business, it almost becomes hard for us to conceptualize, because we're just like human social beings. But if you think of every business as a person, and we think about, let's say we have 3 people, one of them we've never met before, and they come and say, hey, I can make you $10,000 a month. I can make you whatever. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Probably a scam next, Same situation for the next person, same boat. Now, let's say we have the third person who we've never met personally, but we've received value from at a speech that they did at the town hall. For whatever reason, we're there, we saw that, and we're like, you know what, they make some good points. And now they say, hey, I can make you $10,000 a month, whatever. You might still be skeptical, but now you're actually going to book that call because you like know them, you feel familiar, you know their background, and you know that they haven't like just done just anything that would be, unethical. And you don't know these other people, you don't know their backgrounds, and you feel way more comfortable with that. And when it comes to like staying true to who you are in your brand, it's funny. I think a lot of people look at other people's brands and they say like, I want to be the X of this industry, or I want to do that. I think people overthink it. It's like you just got to start and just be you. What do you think is valuable? What do you enjoy? And uniquely the different ways in which you're like a bit weird or like whatever, that's going to resonate with some people and won't with others. And that's just the nature of it. And as long as you have good intentions and you're just trying to help and like provide value through it, you'll figure out the details of how to make your videos more concise and interesting and hook people's attention. But I just think people overcomplicate the shit out of it, mainly to try to delay actually doing the uncomfortable process of making content, which is what most people are afraid of, is being judged or only getting 2 likes on a post or whatever it might be.
Fun. Get that, people. But what you're talking about there is you're talking about, you know, being authentic, be you. And as you said, you know, if you've got 5 fingers, if you have 5 fingers, if you're lucky enough to have 5, stack them on top of each other, focus, and by that, then you've got a very laser beam. We know is more focused than a you can cut through metal with a laser beam.
Yes,
flashlight's not going to work so well. But what you're saying is focus on this one area, build that credibility there. Yes, might take a little bit longer, but that's the reality anyway. I often wonder about that when you see these. I'm sure you've seen the chart, and it's got the top, and it's got, you know, this was the plan. We were here, and we're going to have this nice smooth road to here, and then this is what happened. It's like over the shop. Yeah. That was always the reality. It was always going to have these, you know, these things. I'm just wondering from that side of things, do we need to have that step back for someone that's legitimate in wanting to a business? Just have that reality check, which you did when you were younger. It took me a lot longer. So you kudos to you. But having that reality check, you're going, okay, this is the process. Now, if that process is going to be like that, do what Gavin said, you know, focus, establish that well, and then brand off from there. Is that what I'm understanding that became your awareness as well?
Yeah, a lot of what we did. So I also think you need to test and leverage what works best for you, and different people have different skill sets. We've moved way more into content recently because we've realized the value of it and working with our clients and all these things. It's been the different approach. And we're like, why didn't we do this like a year ago, 2 years ago? Because I was so focused on like running ads and sending emails and direct response marketing, because I could see put X in, get Y out.
Yeah.
What I wasn't thinking of and what I was missing is that every time that you're building brand, you can drive sales if you're doing it properly. But the thing is that you're compounding something now, and the value isn't in put X and get Y out, but the value is in the audience that you're building, which is essentially the brand of people that are, you know, trustworthy to that and like that. So I'd say whatever keeps the lights on for forms of marketing that people are doing, don't drop it, continue to do it. But just in addition to that, find a way that you can be efficient with building brand, because it only helps those other things that we're doing. Because like for us, the main things that we focus on are now content, email marketing works really well for us, and then word of mouth. Those are like the 3. You know, we have a person that helps us with like Google ads and retargeting on Facebook, but that's really not a focus of ours. It just is kind of there to capture some of the low hanging fruit and make sure we stay in front of people, not only from content, but in a paid manner as well. So
how much of it from the perspective is, and you mentioned about, you know, being at school and going through that school process, and I've got a 14-year-old son, and I remember going through school as well myself, but the school process you're aiming for, and you mentioned being a straight A student, so kudos there. But to get that, you know, your aim is, you know, you getting high marks. So when you're doing a test, you're getting, you know, well, 100%, say. Yeah. So you've got everything right. When you're doing a sales process or a marketing process, and you put it out there, and you say you put 10 points out there, you contact 10 customers or 10 potential customers, and you only get 2 responses. Oftentimes people go, it didn't work. I think because of that mentality. And you've gone, well, actually we've got 20%. So that's a 20% increase on what we had before.
Yes.
And then if you do that again, that's another 20%, another 20%. How often do you think people give up on that because of that mindset of expecting these exceptional returns, which again, not reality in the real world,
Yeah.
and give up too easily?
Oh my gosh. I think to that point, so many people just don't understand how much brute force you actually have to put in order to fill up a calendar and like pack it up, you know? So like, and this is where brand comes in because it helps your response rate actually be better. And once you're on calls, convert more of those. And while you're building brand, you'll get more book calls from that. But it's like, man, I remember when I joined that coaching program I told you about, we had one LinkedIn automation account. And it was sending, I think, like close to like 80 messages a day or something like that, which is like a lot for that. But then I thought it was a lot. I'm like, yeah, you know, we're doing fine. And looking back at it, I should have like quadrupled down on that strategy because it was really effective for the amount we were spending on it at the time. Now it doesn't work nearly as well because marketers love to ruin everything, which is the nature of it and why adaptability is so important. But with like email, for example, then I started email where, you know, sending maybe like 20 messages a day or whatever. It's like, no, now we send close to 2,000 a day, which is funny. So because marketers get like more and more noisy, so you have to really refine your offer, make sure there's a clear value proposition. And yeah, we work with a lot of B2B businesses, typically between like 20 and 200 employees. So fortunately for us, we have a large market that we can go after. And there's only going to be a percentage of the market that does raise their hand and say, hey, I'm actually interested in this right now. And that is lower hanging fruit, which is what we try to gather with that. And then for the rest of it that needs to be nurtured, that's where the brand comes in. That's where the longevity, discoverability comes in from having someone be able to search something on YouTube and find you. But yeah, to your point, I think most people don't move nearly as fast as they need to for success. Like that's just one thing I realized because I started connecting with other people in the group that were doing 7 figures and they were all like spending just like, you know, oh, I just spent like $20,000 on Facebook ads last month for our own like acquisition. I'm like, yo, I was spending like 500, you know, or like all this stuff. And it just makes you realize how much more you need to do. And to your point, that's why it's important to know your numbers because then it just becomes numbers. Like, for example, we know that we book an appointment for every 400 emails that we send roughly. So that's just the name of our game, you know,
and from that
that
perspective, when you look at that, it's in knowing your numbers, you book an appointment for every 400 emails. Have you costed out what those 400 emails cost?
Oh gosh, we have to break it down. It's ridiculously cheap. We spend like I think around 1,300 a month on our whole like email system with how much everything costs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd have to do the math on that. But we break down typically like the cost just for our marketing and then how much we acquire in business and seeing what the cost of acquisition is. It's funny, we're looking to essentially double down on cold email because it's just working so well. And which is one thing that's nice about brand. You have to be patient, right? You make more content, you're aggressive with that, but you do have to wait for the people to come to you. You need to balance it, I think. And over time, the goal is to just have everyone at your door knocking. I just think the reality is like, it takes a lot of time and energy to get to that point. So
that's where
I don't have it off the top of my head, but
no, because I was wondering, and we're stepping into the profit component there is, and what I call ROE, return on effort. How much, you know, how much you're getting, because a lot of times we, especially for younger businesses, we don't include the actual sweat equity that you're putting in. And that has a cost to it as well. So I was just wondering from that perspective, and that maybe that's a topic for, we can have another discussion on it another day. What I want to come back to is you talked a lot about you create content. Now, authenticity is important. How do you make content authentic? I'm authentic.
The reality is stuff like that, people are going to think is hilarious. Some people are going to be like, oh, I don't think that's funny. I'm offended, whatever. The reality is you just got to be you. And you got to learn your voice too. I'm still getting comfortable on camera is the reality. I'm far from like, you know, the apex of my journey of anything. It just is like, but how do you actually find authenticity? One, ask yourself, who are you? Right. And it's kind of funny. You sit with that, you know who you are and who you portray yourself as or want to be. Like if you read the 50 Laws of Power, you read how people have different masks that they wear. And like, if you're with them long enough, you can see through the cracks of different types of masks and see who they actually are. What I'm saying is, I think the most powerful mask to wear is just when you try to literally take off your mask, because then you're just left with you, and humans connect with other humans. I just think, just learn how to share your content. It might be boring in the beginning. Like I'll say, I'm not the most exciting person to talk with. I feel like, I feel like I provide tactical insights for people. And, if they check out what I do, they're like, oh, this is a good point. I'm still learning how to make it entertaining, and there's all these things. And it's funny because, different people just have different ways of doing things. And I would just say, test to see what you enjoy and test to see what the market responds to, and find the Venn diagram where, that makes the most sense. But if you're ever in doubt, just err on the side of being yourself. Just know, I think a lot of people though, they're saying, oh, I'm being myself, whatever. And they just make content that still doesn't convert. Listen to what the market's saying. There's a way to be yourself, but still optimize how you communicate. Like I'm still being myself when I'm around my friends versus around my parents, and I communicate different ways in both scenarios.
It's interesting that you talk about that, because, and that's why I wanted to ask the question, because a lot of people are trying to put out there, something that they think the world wants to see. And then you just need to look at social media. I mean, how much plastic is out there? And and I always find it fascinating. My authenticity, whatever word that I used, will stay in this podcast. When you look at my podcasts and the other ones I have on share.care, they're not edited. All the ums and arms and foibles are in there. Because to me, now when I look at the world out there, everyone's shortening things, and you watch it and the video goes like this as they cut an or R, and well, they didn't even do it now. Bots do it, don't they? That's from what I understand. Anyway.
Yeah.
But being you is really important. Being a person, I think what you have highlighted there is be that person. How much of that is too, because I look at it, there was an accountant that I was referred to from a marketing perspective, from a group that they were together in, and he produced some YouTube videos, a regular YouTube video on accounting and what to do.
Yeah.
To say that they were not high production value would be an understatement. To say that they were pretty dry would be fair. But in the group, this is what my friend was telling me, who was in the group with him. They asked him, they said, how much business do you get from that? And he said, 95% of my business comes from that. Yeah. Because he was being him, and he was offering a value. He was offering his service. This is what I do. Now, obviously, there's a market there, and a sustainable, profitable market is always important to identify. And as an accounting firm, that's always going to be a need. How much do you think people get hung up on trying to make it all sparkle and shiny without having that authenticity or a legitimate piece of value?
Yeah.
A unique. You mentioned unique. A unique value. Yeah.
To that point, I think it's one of like the biggest detriments is people wanting things to be perfect when they're creating content. Because the name of the game is speed, because in reality, quality beats quantity, but the way that you get quality is by having quantity, right? So it's like you need, and that's why I say when you're finding your voice, you're making content, just publish it, get it out there. As long as you're providing value, you might do it in a roundabout way. It might have been able to have been more entertaining or better edited or whatever. Just set up a camera and just, film it. A lot of people do it on Loom. It's funny. We even have some clients that just have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and they might get, 56, 183 views a video, whatever it is. But man, does their stuff convert better. Like when we're going over, because what we like to do is we like to survey. We like to have them survey. We have a pre-built survey that we give to them to essentially ask their new clients that sign up with them, how'd you hear about us, and tick off all the different ways. And it's so funny how many of them will tick like the content ones for the people that already had that coming in. And just on top of what we do, they also go and make it an effort to, I'm going to make this specific YouTube video on X or whatever it is. It all makes a difference. And they're able to find just like who they are, how they communicate. And even though their content isn't seen by a ton of people, the reality is this. Let's say I serve, let's say chiropractors. I don't know how many there are in the US. I think there's around 60 or 80,000. I could be wrong with that. Okay, well, why am I trying to get 5 million views on a video if there's 60,000 chiropractors? You know? So in reality, you can have that broad appeal, and a certain subsect will be chiropractors, and it'll still be beneficial for your business to get that many views. But if you specifically make videos around solving the problems for those people, you'll get less views because there's way less of an audience. Instead of making some viral content and marketing to billions of people or millions of people, you're now marketing to 80,000 chiropractors. So it's so much smaller of a pool for people that are going to be interested to click. Your views are going to go down. But are we optimizing for views or for, actually growing a business is kind of the question that it comes down to.
Yeah, that's a wonderful observation you've made there. And I want to reference back Frank Walker again. When those DJs did the did the spoof of his ad on YouTube, it went viral. And I don't know how many millions of views it got, but we were talking about that. And he said to me, because he showed me, he goes, guess how many extra sales I got out of that? 0. None.
That's yeah.
And he gets tremendous. He says, I changed 2 words in my radio ad, and I know this because I've got it booked in my calendar, and he showed me these times here are booked in my calendar. I changed 2 words in my radio ad, and we book $1 million of sales that weekend.
Jeez. Yeah.
So that's what I was wondering, because you mentioned about quality. And that's why I wanted to come back to that. Is it quality of production? Is it quality of getting the numbers of likes, or is it quality of delivering a service to your client? Which is the focus is more important?
Yeah. I mean, as the focus, I would say the actual value you provide, right? Because let's say I come on here with a great setup and I spew utter bullshit. Who cares? I'll catch people's attention, but I'll lose them. So many people are so focused on the hook, and the hook is important. But what's more important than that is the actual value that's delivered in the video, because people are so obsessed with the hook, and I get it, because you're not going to get to the value if you don't hit it first. But the reality is, what's the point of hooking somebody if you get their attention just to disappoint them? And it's like, then you're building your brand in a way when they see you next, they're just going to skip because you're not providing anything that's actually valuable to them. So I would rather have, and this is maybe a controversial statement for some content creators, but I would rather have a hook that isn't as effective and a freaking great actual punch and value to the video, rather than the other way around. And you'll see people that have millions of views just with their phone, or you'll see people that have 2 views with a whole professional setup. So I think a lot of times you just want to do what you feel good with, but don't let that slow you down, I would say.
I love that what you just said there about having that value, because again, I'm older, and I was having that discussion yesterday with a friend who's same age as me, and we talk about it. So we don't sell our customers; they sell us because we're offering them value. They actually sell us. It's like and I had that yesterday with the 2 clients I met with. So I love what you're talking about, creating, especially that authentic. I'm going to use that. It's going to be a word in the dictionary. I had that when I was at Toastmasters. We're talking about, and I use speeching as a word. And then when you're speeching, and we had the one of the regional people there, and she started using it, and it's been used so many times since then in many Toastmasters meetings using the word speeching. So authentic is going to become a word. From that, if you want to, because I know we've gone for quite a bit of time here, and it's getting late where you are. With that, if you were to sum it up, from the work that you do, what would be the key takeaways that you'd want? And we'll put for people that connect with you, put all your details in the show notes here. But for people that connect with you, tell us a little bit about what key things that you do that you want them to take away about your business, what the offerings that you have, so that they know about that.
For sure. I mean, I'd say starting with our time together as a whole, I think so many things just come down to speed. Like, it's kind of funny, like, because if you move quick enough and if you're a good student of life, you can analyze the data and feedback that you're getting. You're eventually going to bounce around until you like are doing something that works, or figure that out. But yeah, there's just so many things we hit on, and there's a lot of great things. But I feel like a lot of people, when they're presented with that, they write down 5 reminders and then execute on none of them. And that's no dig. And I've been that person. I really have.
Yeah.
Now I make it such an effort when I do something. I think I heard Alex Ramosi say this once, and I believe it was like beautifully put. He says one of the biggest determiners of success is the speed in which people receive new information to when they implement it. And when you have someone that just implements stuff quickly, that is a really good sign that they're actually going to see success in whatever it is that they're doing. So I would say whatever really resonated with you, where you're like, oh, that makes sense, just go. It's so easy to overthink it or overanalyze, or, oh, I'm not ready yet, or this, that, whatever. And there's an order of events for things, and everyone's situation's different. But I would say, yeah, that's one thing from the interview as a whole, just that I would say, like, just go,
I love that.
Be authentic.
See, totally is going to become a word. But I love what you've talked about there, and I'm a big fan. I reference pop culture a lot. I don't know if you've seen the movie Margin Call. Jeremy Irons talks about there's 3 ways to succeed: be first, be smarter, or cheat. Now, cheating is obviously out, and we can be really smart, but it's a hell of a lot easier to be first. And what you're talking about is speed, and that's what we do in my Max Time program. It's like you touch it once, you start something, you finish it, then and then you move on to the next thing, which is what you talk. I love that. I'm going to steal the 5-finger thing. Stack your fingers on top of each other. It's awesome. All right, so tell us about you've for the audience. Can you give us a bit about the Empathy Firm? What are the services that you offer? How do they reach you? What's the best way to connecting with you?
Yeah, for sure.
How to be authentic.
Yeah. Here's the process. So I would say the best way to learn more about us is just to go to our site, which is empathyfirm.com. Our services are primarily what we've been discussing today, of helping get people booked on podcasts and then repurposing that content done for them. So that way their brand can grow online in a multitude of ways. And part of that repurposing actually includes, which is our other service, getting them into online media, which can help, rank for their name and their company, and they can use it on sales calls for more credibility. And, there's a lot of different benefits to how someone can use that. What I'll say is this too, for anyone that is listening to the show, if you are wanting to get in the media online, which if you're wanting to get on podcasts, this helps you get booked on more podcasts because it adds credibility to you, especially for a baseline of like, this person is who they say they are. What we're doing now is we're getting people in 3 publications for absolutely free. And this is normally a service that our minimum is actually 3 a month. That's typically $3,500 a month. But if somebody wants those 3 online publications, literally all we request is just the article that they're wanting published. And we have trainings on how to write that in 10 minutes using ChatGPT and answering a questionnaire that they can fill out, which we'll also, be providing. But we'll literally do everything. There's not a catch where it's like, oh, it's free when you sign up. It's none of that. It's legitimately free. If anybody that is listening or any of your, audience wants that, they just have to email Grant, Grant, which is my co-founder, at empathyfirm.com and just email him the subject line with the name of this podcast. And we'll get y'all hooked up with that. And yeah.
That's awesome. All right, we'll put all those details in the show notes. Gavin, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. So much wonderful content. Very, very wise man for your age, I must say. I'm very impressed. Well done.
I really appreciate it. And it was a great time coming on. So thank you.